Good evening, welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Zaka Jacob. Even as the second wave of the coronavirus is ravaging through large parts of India, we do now know more than ever before what to do to treat this disease and, more importantly, what not to do while treating COVID-19. Of particular concern is how and when to use steroids and, of course, medicines like remdesivir and tocilizumab. On the show tonight, I'll be joined by Dr. Matthew Verghese after his lucid explanation of the various timelines of this disease. That video went viral on the internet. I'll be asking him, how do you deal with COVID-19 both at home in the first stage and, if God forbid, you have to go to the hospital in the latter stage? That's going to come up in just 1 second, but first, this story. All right, joining me now is Dr. Matthew Verghese. He's consultant orthopedic surgeon at the St. Stephen's Hospital, whose video, of course, a lot of our viewers have seen. And in fact, it was by public demand, Dr. Verghese, that we've managed to get you on the show. So let's start with, the way you've beautifully segmented this disease. Let's start with the first set of 5 days. Why are these first 5 days important, and what should people watch out for at the onset of this disease?
5-day protocol that I looked at came from my documenting meticulously every case that interacted with me, every patient that interacted with me. And I found that the first symptom that the patient had, and in fact, I have a diary which I followed every patient, date-wise I kept following. And it showed that very clearly the first symptom was very important. And the patient would often tell the most significant symptom, usually the fever or something. But one day before they would have had an itchy throat. And one day before they would have had a body ache, they would attribute to maybe an excessive cleaning that they did. But that is an important day, because from that day onwards, the countdown begins. And that first few days symptom, 2-3 days symptom, is because of viremia. That is the space when the virus has been applying in your body, you're infective to others, and you are having the symptom because of viremia. And your body is fighting with antibodies to curtail the viremia and reduce the virus in your body. The first 3 days from your first symptom is important. You have fever, you have sore throat, you have itchy throat, whatever. And maybe on 3rd, 4th day, you have anosmia, that is loss of sense of smell. A lot of people think this is your first day. No, it is not your first day. First day is when you had body ache. And your virus-related symptom finishes with these 3-4 days. After this, the disease takes an ominous, dangerous turn. That often, in the previous surge that happened in September, October, November, it used to be around 6-7 days. But in this surge, the virus is more aggressive, more contagious. It takes the more dangerous turn end of 4th, 5th day. And that turn is not because of virus. That turn is because of the antibodies in your body, which was supposed to kill the virus, which was supposed to kill the virus, now attacking the body's own cells. Some cells have some proteins on their surface which mimic the same structure as that on the virus's body, the spike protein. And these are most commonly found in your lungs.
Yes.
So what do the antibodies do? They go and attack these cells in your lung vessels, blood vessels. And that is where your blood begins to clot, and blood begins to clot. So the first 2-3 days symptom, after the first symptom, they are insignificant. They don't cause any, you don't need to do anything about it. At best, if your body ache, you take paracetamol, and that's it. But after days...
No, so tell me... Yeah. So what happens, for example, let's say after 5 days, like you said, most people, 80% of cases, You just take paracetamol and multivitamins and stuff, and you'll be fine. The fever will start subsiding after 5 days. But what if the fever doesn't start subsiding? The big concern, a lot of patients, the ones in hospital, the ones at home, whose symptoms persist after 5 days, a lot of concern has been around the use of steroids. So can you explain to our viewers the advantages of using steroids and the disadvantages or the riders that come along with it?
Yeah. So 80% of patients, they are fine after 3-4 days of little virus, viremia, and the little symptoms that go with it. And they don't have to worry at all, completely free. But the 20% that have the antibodies that attack the blood vessels in the lung, they have clotting in the lungs, and they have 3 key symptoms that you have to watch for. And what are the 3 key symptoms that you have to watch out for? First is fever, which was low grade, suddenly becomes 100 plus. 98.9, 99 is not so significant, but it 100 plus. Or your fever settled, and then it turns again 100, 101 degrees Celsius. So it's important during the 4th, 5th day, you do not take paracetamol. A lot of people keep taking paracetamol for body ache. So it will mask this fever which is coming up, which is telling you there is an ominous thing going on. The second thing, a lot of people complain, and this is less number of people complaining of congestion in their chest. Something, doctor, there's some congestion in my chest. And a third group will say, a deep cough. Doctor, nothing comes out, I'm coughing. So if this is there on the 5th, 6th day, that is the time when your antibodies are causing the problem, not the virus. Virus has been finished with your body antibodies. It is this stage which needs to be attacked. And that is the only stage when you would think of steroids. If you didn't have any symptoms on the 5th, 6th day, 7th day, you will forget about it. No steroids at all. 80% don't need that. Of the 20%, the ones that have symptoms, with cough like that and a congestion like that, are the ones who need the steroids. Don't start steroids on day 1 of the symptom. You'll only prolong your illness and cause problem. Don't steroids until.
So on day 5 or 6, as you said, this problem develops. It becomes intense, and the fever becomes high grade fever. That's when you start on steroids. And like you very clearly said, this is not the virus. This is the antibodies working in your system. So now tell us, what does the steroid do? If you could explain in layman terms this whole cytokine shower leading to a cytokine storm, how does one stop in that 5th, 6th day, if at all somebody gets to that stage?
I like to use the analogy of the umbrella. When you have clouds in the sky, you have the umbrella, but you don't open it. You keep it in your bag. So when you have viremia, you do not give steroids. Forget it. Once the shower starts, then you have the umbrella to protect you. When the shower begins, 5th, 6th day, when the shower begins of the antibodies, which cause damage to the blood vessels in the lung and where clotting happens. So the steroids have to be combined with anticoagulants. A common misconception among doctors is you don't need anticoagulants because there is a test that they do, D-dimer. D-dimer is risen in your blood only when there are clots in your lungs in significant amount. Otherwise, D-dimer is not. So your whole idea is giving anticoagulants to prevent that from happening. So both combination of steroids and anticoagulants are important. You start, it suppresses the antibody from attacking your blood vessels. So the steroids are good suppressants. It's used in cancer therapy to suppress cancer cells. It is used in autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, mixed connective tissue disorders, systemic lupus, all those diseases which are immune related. Steroids are a mainstay of treatment. They suppress your immunity, and therefore they have the double-edged sword problem of infection coming up. Infections are fought by immune cells. If you suppress immunity, there is possibility of infection. And that is the problem that can happen with steroids. The other problem with steroids is these are diabetogenic. So diabetics have poorer control of diabetes. Their blood sugar shoots up to 500, shoots up to 400. So you have to be careful that you be in touch with the diabetologist. I'm on steroids, control my diabetes properly. He may put you on insulin, but you can manage that very well. Only thing is, you need a physician's advice to control that. Not that you can't take it, you can take it, but a physician's advice is required. There is this huge fear of mucormycosis which has come up. Yeah, sorry.
Yes. No. So one final word. So when does, in your opinion, when should someone be prescribed these drugs like remdesivir and tocilizumab? Because that seems to be the one thing that a lot of patients, a lot of doctors are prescribing it, and a lot of patients seem to be running from pillar to post for those medicines.
So there are these drugs which is a long list of drugs which are prescribed: ivermectin, azithromycin, doxycycline,
Yes.
remdesivir, tocilizumab. Now, tocilizumab is a monoclonal antibody which is specifically attacking a certain type of cytokine interleukins that are there, which attack them and prevent their rise and prevent the damage caused by those. Now, this is a very special category of patients where these bodies are suspected, provided, remember, these are antibodies, okay, attacking another cytokine in your body, and these have a downside
Alright.
of suppressing your immunity, cellular immunity, so they can hugely increase their infection probability. So these are to be used with caution. Remdesivir and other drugs which have been reallocated for use in this, they have not been shown to have sufficient evidence of impact on changing the course of the disease. In fact,
Correct.
a systematic review, which is one of the high level of evidence reviews which they have done on remdesivir, there is insufficient evidence to say that it makes a significant difference. But doctors prescribe it in very select
All right.
cases when the patient is, not responding to other things. They might try these, but there is no sufficient evidence for this.
All right, Dr. Matthew Varghese, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18, and thank you for very lucidly explaining to our viewers the different stages of this disease, because I think there was a lot of confusion amongst viewers as to what should be done at each stage, and I think we're grateful for you to explain that very lucidly for our viewers. Thank you very much. That was Dr. Matthew Varghese from the St. Stephen's Hospital. Meanwhile, let's shift focus now. Even as the COVID curve seems to be plateauing, certainly in most cities, most big cities across the country, now it seems to be spreading to rural parts of India. CNN News 18's Arun Dhanta went to Greater Noida, which is on the outskirts of the national capital, to a bunch of villages there, where suddenly in the last week, 10 days, there's been a rapid rise in corona cases.
The lanes of villages in Uttar Pradesh's Gautam Budh Nagar district, which are normally abuzz with activity, now wear a deserted look. Residents are not even letting children step out of their homes as fear has gripped them.
गवर्नमेंट ये भी सुविधा नहीं कर रही कि भाई चलो गरीब आदमी मर रहे हैं, चलो हम जाकर तो देखें, कम से कम बूझे तो सही, उनकी परेशानी दूर तो करें, कोई सुनने को राजी नहीं है.
A week ago, Atar Singh, the resident of Rosa Jalapur village, lost 2 of his sons in a single day to corona. Today, he is now himself fighting for his life in the hospital, and his brother spoke to us and exposed the apathy of the system.
कोई प्रशासन हेल्प करने के लिए आगे नहीं बढ़ा है, ना कोई स्वास्थ्य कर्मी है कि स्वास्थ्य विभाग से कोई हेल्प मिले. तो इसलिए जो है लोग बाग यहाँ अपने घरों में भी जो है घरों से नहीं निकल पा रहे हैं, इतना डर है.
3 villages that we visited have witnessed more than 30 deaths in each in last 35 to 40 days, which went unreported. An unknown number of cases are still positive.
कोई किसी को ट्रीटमेंट देने को तैयार नहीं है.
Thus, no testings in these areas have been a key contributor to the surge in corona cases and subsequent deaths. Moreover, less than 4% have vaccinated themselves till date, even when the country started inoculation from 16th of January.
टेस्टिंग तो यहाँ पे 0% है, ना तो कोई सरकार के तरफ से कोई हेल्प आ रही है लोगों पे. जिसको भी कोविड है वो भी ये गांव में झोला छाप डॉक्टर है, झोला छाप डॉक्टर से दवा खा के अपने ट्रीटमेंट को ले रहे हैं.
Some of the locals in Sadulpur and Khairpur villages of Gautam Budh Nagar don't know how to register on the CoWIN app, and some don't even have smartphones with them, which, along with the slight fear of post-vaccination symptoms and overcrowding at vaccination sites, keeps them away from the jab.
बहुत पर फोन चलाने नहीं आ रहे, बुक करने नहीं आ रही, दूर जाने की है, गांव में लग जाए तो बढ़िया.
Many elderly men and women are also not going for vaccination as the centers are simply too far away. The solution is simple according to these villagers. Have a vaccination center in every village.
इतनी दूर कोटगांव में दे दिए भाई साहब, कैसे जाएंगे? हमारे बच्चे नहीं जा सकते, हम नहीं जा सकते पैरन थे। क्या यह गांव में ना आ सकते खैरपुर में? हम इतनी दूर कैसे जाएं? अब बिसरक जाते हैं, लाइन में लग के घर आ जाते हैं, पर्ची 4-4 दिन की बनी है, हमारे लग नहीं पाती होते।
मदद ही चाहते हैं कि घर आवे, लगा जाए या कैंप लगा दे गाँव में, तो किसी पकड़ के ले जाऊंगा, लगवा दूंगा।
The villagers of Gautam Budh Nagar in Uttar Pradesh are falling prey to the system as they are not getting any help from the government. Majority of them have not inoculated so far, either due to the fear of vaccination or their places are too far away from the vaccination centers. These are the things which require urgent attention to nip the virus in the bud. With camera person Pramod Saklani and Vikas Rawat, this is Arun Dhanta for CNN News 18.
Meanwhile, the big political story of the day happened in Bengal, where the CBI today arrested 4 TMC leaders, including sitting ministers Firhad Hakim and Subrata Mukherjee, along with Madan Mitra and Shovan Chatterjee. This in connection with the Narada scam case. But the drama actually ensued when Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee decided to camp outside the Nizam Palace office of the CBI. She was there for 6 hours, registering a protest, arguing with the central forces who had been deputed at the agency's office. Outside the CBI office, there was stone pelting by a huge crowd of TMC supporters, so much so that TMC MP Abhishek Banerjee had to intervene and ask for calm.
Things are heating up here right outside the Nizam Palace CBI headquarters. As you can see, Trinamool Congress supporters in huge numbers have gathered outside the gate and are protesting. At this point in time, you can see they are clearly angry at the 4 leaders having been arrested. 3 of them are senior Trinamool Congress leaders. We also know that Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has herself arrived at Nizam Palace, and she is sitting outside the CBI office. She has called this arrest quote-unquote illegal. This is, according to the Trinamool Congress and Mamata Banerjee, political vendetta.
No, we are going for court. We are going for court. Yes, special court. This is an arbitrary action on the part of the governor. A governor has become a bloodsucker. A governor who has thrown all constitutional things into the window, and a governor who is after the Trinamool Congress. A governor bloodsucker.
All right, clearly even as the TMC leaders are saying that they're going to challenge this in court and this is going to move ahead legally, this is clearly a political battle and has been made into one by the Chief Minister with her decision to go and camp outside the CBI office. Shogata is now joining us live from outside the Nizam Palace, where the Chief Minister was there for almost 6 hours protesting and then arguing with the officials there. Clearly, she's decided to make this political, throw the gauntlet back at the BJP and back at the centre, who she believes is using the CBI to settle political scores. How does this story politically now move forward, Shogoto?
Well, obviously, this was a political, story to develop right from the very beginning. Some of these leaders who have been arrested, are top Trinamool Congress leaders, ministers in Mamata Banerjee's present cabinet. Madan Mitra was a minister in Mamata Banerjee's previous cabinet, and Shovan Chatterjee, who moved on from the Trinamool Congress to the BJP and has now severed ties with the BJP as well, was also the former mayor of Kolkata, when under the Trinamool Congress banner. But so obviously, this would be handled and seen in a political manner. That's exactly what has happened. We have seen Mamata Banerjee take to streets, hold dharnas, and reach to the streets to bolster her street fighter image. Even previously, even during the say for example when the CBI reached the house of former police commissioner Rajiv Kumar in the Sharda and Rose Valley Ponzi scam case, and we know what happened on the streets of Kolkata that day. So this is yet another such instance, and it is going to be played out politically. At this point in time, Zaka, for information of our viewers, the hearing at the court has ended. All the 4 accused were produced before the court in a virtual manner. And the hearing is ended. The judge is yet to pass an order whether he would grant bail to all these 4 accused or whether he would remand them in judicial custody. We do not yet know, but I'll just step out of the frame and I'll show you the kind of of Trinamool Congress presence that remains outside the Nizam Palace premises for the time being, and they are obviously waiting for that order to come. And once if the order is bail, then obviously there would be cheers. But if the order is judicial custody, I'm really not sure. The crowd is quite volatile. I'm really not sure, Zaka, how the crowd will react once that order comes. Back to you.
All right. We'll see. We'll wait for that order. For the moment, thanks very much, Gautam, for joining us from outside the CBI office there in Kolkata. Meanwhile, from the far east to the far west, where cyclone Taukte is now expected to make landfall between Porbandar and Bhavnagar in Gujarat over the next 3 hours or so. It has already left in its wake a trail of death and devastation across large parts of coastal Kerala, Karnataka, Goa and coastal Maharashtra as well. In fact, there is extremely powerful wind speeds up to 185 kilometers an hour through large parts of these states. The Gujarat government has shifted over 1 lakh people who are living in coastal areas. The Prime Minister, in fact, spoke to both the Chief Ministers of Gujarat, Goa as well as Maharashtra to take stock of the preparation there. The cyclone has left a trail of devastation in coastal Maharashtra in particular. Also, rains have been lashing Mumbai along with strong winds which have uprooted trees in many places.
Gusty winds, heavy rainfall. This is the situation in Mumbai right now, even as prediction for the city is of high rains and of windy atmosphere. We are seeing that there's waterlogging at several locations, several low-lying areas in Mumbai. A high tide was there at almost around 4 o'clock, and that is why we are seeing that Mumbaikars are currently facing problems of traffic snarls, of waterlogging, even as the situation is only likely to look up post-night today. NDRF has been deployed at several locations. 5 sub-teams have already been placed at several beaches in the city. Aditya Thackeray, who is the Mumbai Guardian Minister, has taken stock of the situation.
I'm at Mumbai's Borivali area, and right behind me is the Borivali railway station, and as you can see, people who are allowed to take the trains are literally wading through water to make their way out because this entire area is waterlogged. Yes, buses can manage to wade through this particular, but auto rickshaws are getting stopped and they are breaking down on the way. People are also finding it hard in the current circumstances to come out of the station, considering the entire area is waterlogged, and this has been the situation for quite some time. There is some respite right now because the rains have stopped, but we have seen that there has been continuous rains at several parts in Mumbai, and this is one of them. However, this is completely waterlogged at this point. This is the situation outside Mumbai's Borivali station, where passengers who are taking the train, who are allowed to take the train, are wading through water to get their way out when they are reaching home.
All right, let me go straight across to my colleague Janak Dave, who is joining us live from Varawal in the southern coast of Gujarat. जनक, वहाँ का ताज़ा हाल क्या है? कब तक ये साइक्लोन लैंडफॉल एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं और वहाँ पे डिस्ट्रिक्ट अथॉरिटीज ने क्या-क्या इंतजाम किया है?
देखिए 8 बजे का वक्त बताया जा रहा है जब ये गुजरात जो कोस्टल एरिया है, खासतौर पर पोरबंदर से लेके महुआ के बीच में, और जो वेरावल जो जगह है जहाँ पर मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, मैं अभी फिलहाल वेरावल के कोस्ट पे हूँ और आप देखिए उफनती लहरें साफ तौर पे बता रही है कि अब जो साइक्लोन है वो बेहद नज़दीक है। तकरीबन 100 किलोमीटर दूरी पर होगा साइक्लोन और ये बिल्कुल महुआ के पास और जो ऊना का जो एरिया है वहाँ पर ये हिट करेगा और रफ्तार उसकी 150 किलोमीटर प्रति घंटे से लेके 185 किलोमीटर प्रति घंटे की रफ्तार होगी। ऐसे में आप अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं कि कितना खतरनाक तरीके से ये इसका असर होगा और जहाँ पर ये लैंडफॉल करने जा रहा है मध्य गुजरात की ओर, वहाँ पर अगर आप देखें वहाँ तक इसका असर सुरेंद्रनगर तक देखने को मिलेगा। तो ऐसे में प्रशासन ने अपनी ब्लूप्रिंट तैयार रखी है कि इससे कैसे निपटा जाए, लेकिन धड़कनें तेज़ है जगह। आपको बताऊं कि यहाँ पर अधिकारी लोग चूँकि पिछले कुछ समय से कोरोना की महामारी से भी जूझ रहे थे, पूरा जो प्रशासन है उसी से जूझ रहा था। वह दोहरी चुनौती अभी उनके सामने ही आई है कि अब साइक्लोन आया है। तो ऐसे में अब साइक्लोन का असर भी 1998 में इस तरीके का साइक्लोन गुजरात में देखा गया था, इतना खतरनाक तरीके से, क्योंकि उसके एक्सट्रीम सीवियर साइक्लोन की कैटेगरी में जब रखा गया है तो वो जब तेज़ हवाएं चलेगी साथ में बारिश होगी तो वो और मुसीबत बढ़ाएगा। और ऐसे में चाहे वो रूरल बेल्ट हो चाहे अर्बन बेल्ट हो, दोनों जगह पर इसका असर देखने को मिल सकता है। और ऐसे में सरकार ने ब्लूप्रिंट ज़रूर बनाई है इससे निपटने की, लेकिन वाकई में जब ये हिट होगा उस समय ये वो ब्लूप्रिंट का काम आएगी या उसके वो सारी चीज़ों को लेकर धड़कनें तेज़ हैं प्रशासन की, जो मुस्तैद है, जो अधिकारी। ऐसे में देखना होगा। अब 8 बजे का वक्त दिया है जब कोस्टल जो पूरा जो बेल्ट है वहाँ पर ये हिट होगा और अभी से असर आप देखें, मैं जहाँ पर हूँ वेरावल और कोस्टल एरिया में, वहाँ पर अभी जो लहरें हैं उसमें उसका असर देखने को मिल रहा है। जगह
जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जनक. You also take care and we'll be in touch with you. We'll go back to our reporters as and when the cyclone makes landfall. Finally, as we wrap up, a positive story in these times of doom and gloom. The oldest Hindu crematorium in Goa, in Margao, has now opened its doors for people of other faiths to give them the one thing that COVID has taught us all: dignity in death. Thanks for tuning in.
As Goa witnesses a surge in COVID cases and deaths, the state's oldest Hindu crematorium has opened its doors for other faiths. The Matha Gramastha Hindu Sabha in Margao, which is 112 years old, is offering newly constructed pyres to COVID patients belonging to the Christian and Muslim faith.
In 7 days' time, we have constructed 4 more pyres, and now we have 7 pyres dedicated only for COVID. Yeah. So today's rate is general is average 4 and COVID is average 7.
Mr. Nayak, who's the 4th generation in his family to lead the institution, says he's hoping that people in need are able to overcome the barriers of religion.
Only for COVID, if anybody dies due to COVID, we will not look at the caste. Let it be Hindu, Muslim or Christian. Yeah. That is how in fact it started, but they were totally scared and they thought what will happen if 10-15 Christians or Muslims die in a day, where they will cremate them.
While in other cities, crematoriums are witnessing a crunch in supply of firewood, in Goa, Good Samaritans are coming forward to donate firewoods.
As far as wood is concerned, temporarily, I am quite okay now. And believe me, even today, 3 trucks are dumped by one of my friends from far off from Sangay, free of cost.
The pandemic doesn't discriminate by religion. This crematorium has shown that humanity needn't either. With Harman Gomes in Goa, this is Arunima.